I'm Alex Roberts.
I'm Jared Miller.
And it's time to dangle, snipe, and stampede.
It's good!
Welcome back to Dangle, Snipe, and Stampede. It's the first show of 2024. I'm Alex Roberts.
I'm Jared Miller.
And what a interesting start to the second semester for these hockey teams. All three teams have now officially played their first games of the semester. And got to say, there's one team that's standing out over the other two in the Nationals race.
Yeah, no, the Nationals race for the Division 1 team, men's Division 1 team, heated up quick 2 weekends ago after back-to-back heartbreaking losses to University of Central Oklahoma in overtime. And, you usually don't jump up after two losses,
No.
but two overtime losses to the number 3 team in the country.
And right, a team that hasn't lost to anyone in the conference.
Jumped up double-digit spots to number 23 in the country. And it was a big start to the semester. Followed up by a weekend in Missouri where they played the Ice Bears and split that series, and had a quite a memorable moment that I think stands out that got some attention on a bigger level. And there's a Blake Blevins game-tying goal celebration. But instead of just hearing from us, we're going to send it over. We had an interview with him, and we're going to send it over that now. So take a look.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dangle, Snipe, and Stampede. Today we have another interview with Blake Blevins here today of the D1 Colorado men's hockey team. How you doing, Blake?
Pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing good. Great series over the weekend out in Springfield against the Bears. Of course, got that big win. God, that was exciting to watch. That was such a fun comeback to watch.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was unexpected, kind of, but we were working hard in the end.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into those, I just want to kind of learn a little more about you because if I'm correct, from Virginia, and not maybe the most known hockey kind of community. I know the Capitals are right there, but not the first thought when you think of a hockey kind of area. How'd you just start playing?
Yeah, so I'm an Air Force brat, so moved around my whole life. Didn't want to move from St. Louis. That's where I started watching hockey. Loved the Blues. And then didn't want to move, so my parents were like, oh, you can play hockey if we move, because we're moving to Colorado Springs. So moved there. They thought it was going to be one session or two, and then it turns out it's 15 years later. So,
All right. Yeah,
awesome.
Alex did not like that Blues comment. He's a big Blackhawks fan.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago, so, I have no leverage in this argument, so I'm just going to keep quiet.
And then you played, in Charlotte, I saw, and then Provo, Utah, and all over. You ended up back in Boulder. Was that because of the Colorado Springs time, or did you just enjoy CU?
Yeah, right before I came here, I was in Utah, and it reminded me of living back in Colorado. I love the mountains, love to go snowboarding, just love the Front Range area. So I was like, what better to apply to than CU?
And then just before we started recording, I asked you the grade, and there's 2 seasons played. You said you were a junior. Did something change after that freshman year? You kind of just missed it?
Yeah, I was just chilling, hanging out, and I do Air Force RTC as well, and I had mostly just Air Force friends, and my girlfriend was like, you probably need to expand your friend group, and I was just like, sure, I'll go try out for a day or so, and I guess it worked out.
Yeah, 2 years later.
Seemed like it worked out.
All right, now, so since our last recording, and there were 2 road series. The first one against Central Oklahoma, 2 kind of heart-wrenching losses there, both in overtime. But that's the number 3 team in the country. Is that a boost in confidence kind of moving forward the rest of the season, just thinking you could beat anyone on any given day?
Oh, for sure. I think we came into the spring semester fresh with a new mindset that in the fall semester we were a Saturday night team, so we wouldn't show up on Friday and we'd play Saturday well. But this semester we came in, we're like, no more of that. We're going to play a solid weekend every weekend.
All right.
It's a great mindset. And how would you define your play style? Kind of as a lead question into the.
I would say I'm pretty gritty, like power forward, meat and potatoes hockey.
Yeah, so as that gritty forward, what's the mentality on each shift? Like wear down the other team, find like a scoring opportunity, hold down the line. What type of mentality goes in shift by shift?
Yeah, for me, usually it's like just play very hard defensively, be that F3 high in the offensive zone so we have good defensive cover, make sure I can hit as many people as possible, just get the puck deep,
Perfect.
Yeah, kind of building off of that. I took a quick look at the elite prospects before showing up here. You had back-to-back seasons with 123 penalty minutes in Utah. Like, how'd that happen? They just kind of add up over time.
I mean, at a certain point, some guys got to stand up, for your team, and I don't know. I thought it was funny to end exactly with the same number, but yeah, just stand up for your team and be the guy that does everything.
Yeah, I think that comes through when we're watching the games.
Has that been a mindset as you've kind of grown as a hockey player?
Yeah, for sure. Because not every guy's willing to stand up. Obviously, like if you're an all-star, you're not willing to get gritty as much. But I know I probably wouldn't be an all-star, so got to do something to get me in there,
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. But going off of that, we're gonna jump to Missouri State last weekend. You say not an all-star, but you did have that game-tying goal late in the first game. Can you kind of just walk us through what happened and how it went in?
Yeah, so it was towards the almost end of the power play with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. We turned it over, recovered it right by the blue line. I think it was Trunko, walked down the middle, passed it to George Issa for a little one-touch pass to me, which dragged their defenders over to him. And I just, almost one-touched it, top right, and saw it went in, and I was just like, okay.
Well, that's going to lead to the next question. So the big thing was the celebration after. That caught a lot of people's attention. I know it caught ours immediately. When you throw up the watch, like the Shedeur, was that pre-planned or did that just happen?
No, it just came to my head, and I figured what a better time to do it,
That's true. So then, after that, going to the bench, after you do that, do you go back to the bench saying, we can't lose now? That's I can't do that, and then we end up losing this game.
Yeah, I think it just hyped all the boys up, because who was it? Rapp scored right before that, a couple minutes, and then that happened, and we just knew there was no way to lose this game. It was not happening.
Do you think that kind of played a factor in the momentum and the pressure that you guys were going to continue to apply, which obviously led to the Borgie game winner?
Oh, for sure, it definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It was a fantastic comeback.
And then the next game kind of fell out to a 6-0 deficit. I talked to Drew McConaughey earlier this year, and he kind of said after wins, sometimes you guys are kind of riding into that high into the next game. Would you say that's kind of what happened in the second game?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say it was all the social media attention distracted all the boys and stuff right before. So that's not ideal to have. Got to stay calm, cool, and collective, And
then moving forward in the season, how do you guys kind of correct that in any way? Just because it happened. When it happened in that first game against Missouri State here, where you ended up coming back and winning in overtime. But it's, is there a way to correct that? Really? Would you say?
I'd say now that we've experienced it, and if it were to ever happen again, we've already bounced back this week at practice, just battling hard and just getting out there and grinding against each other. I don't see it happening.
All right.
Yeah, so going forward, you have 4 weeks left before bids go out to nationals. Do you think the team has positive momentum going into the final month of the season with this big weekend against Oklahoma coming up?
Oh, for sure. We're fighting for our spot. We're going to crawl to get in there,
Perfect. And then overall, kind of going into this weekend, what's you guys' attitude for the first home games of the semester?
Hopefully the fans show up because that just makes the atmosphere better. But we just see that them is just another team that we can beat,
Yeah, kind of just one last thing that I have written down was I was just going to ask you guys, are you watching the standings, the rankings every time they come out, or is it just go out there and play?
Yeah, they're released, I think, every Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And, it's always a big talk. As soon as we jumped to number 23, that was in the group chat right away. And everyone was just hyped for that. So we watch them pretty good.
All right, yeah. Well, this weekend it's number 23 versus number 24 now. So it's going to be it's exciting, big games this week against Oklahoma. So.
Huge weekends for the Nationals conversation. Be there at the CU Rec Center this Friday and Saturday. Come support Blake and the rest of the team. We want to thank Blake Blevins for joining the show, and make sure to show up to the Rec Center this weekend, Friday and Saturday night, for the Buffs matchups against the University of Oklahoma. Buffs ranked at number 23 right now. Oklahoma's at number 24. Bound to be a tight contest.
Yeah, those are the first two teams looking in at the Nationals race. They're the first two that get bumped out. So it's big implications this weekend, early or near the end of January, with just about a month to play. Big games between the 23 and 24 teams in the country, as they are the first two teams that get knocked out of Nationals as of today, January 24th, Wednesday.
This is super nice. Now that we're recording on Wednesdays, we actually get a update on the status of the current rankings when we record the show. We're not kind of speculating where things are going to end up, so that's super nice. But I think it's time to talk about how they got themselves into this position right now, heading into this weekend with their games against UCO and Missouri State. Yeah, tough losses against UCO to start with.
Yeah, tough losses for sure. But it's weird because, like, you don't want to ever be like, oh, well, they might not win that one. But, like, that University of Central Oklahoma team has been dominant for years.
It seems like forever at this point.
And so just, like, tuning into the first game and seeing a tie game,
I know.
it was, whoa. Especially seeing that tying goal at the end, you're like, oh, my, they can do it.
Yeah. And they
then
tied it. Like, they were being outplayed, outshot big time. Like, they forced overtime.
And that's the difference between a point and no points. But it's just like taking a team of that caliber that has that high of a ranking to an extra frame, even when you come up a little short. It's a big thing that adds to the playoff race here at the end.
Well, and considering the fact that they crushed CU 7-1 and 8-2 in Boulder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty huge, and that's a great way to start the second semester. They were outplayed, but, like, it was kind of one of the things I said to myself after watching that game. Colorado is feeling much better going into Game 2, even though they lost, than UCO is. The standard for UCO is winning in regulation, and winning, not just winning, but winning by 3+, game in, game out, unless it's against a top 5, top 10 team. That is the standard. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they, Colorado, I think, coming into that series was the lowest ranked team in the WCHL. So having to go to overtime, outplaying them, what didn't feel like they were, in the greatest of mindsets going into Game 2. And it really showed in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado then jumped out to a 3-0 lead on the next day.
A couple power play goals. They got a 5-on-3 goal, like getting some really good chances.
But they ended up losing in overtime.
Yeah.
As this time it was UCO tying the game late to force overtime. And it's odd because, like, in most circumstances, you're excited when you take a team of that caliber, like that top 5 team, top 3 team, to overtime. But it's a tale of two different stories, because the first game you're ecstatic to tie the game late, and the second game you're trying to hold on at the end and just can't. And it's the same result, but one hurt a lot more than the other. Yeah, I bet
you felt much better exiting one than the other, and like I joked several times in the first semester, if they won in Edmond, that'd be the win of the year. I did not think it was going to happen. I thought they were going to get absolutely smacked, probably by like 8 or 9 goals in each of those games. I genuinely thought that. And frankly, with how they've played against UCO the past handful of years, why would you expect anything different? But they proved us all wrong and showed us that this team is not only much improved, but is more competitive, more tough, more determined, and they're not just going to give up.
And I think that was noticeable more this year as a whole than at least last year and the year before that, when I started really paying attention to the team, it does feel like this team has a different mindset, a different different abilities, more depth. I think helps with that as well. You see freshmen contributing.
Yeah.
You see seniors contributing. You see everyone having an impact, and I think that also is part of it. And also just kind of having that first semester all together, coming off a big win against CSU, it's a high kind of into this next semester.
Well, now everyone's healthy. And
Yep. And you already had that first semester. Now it's just, let's go out there. Let's just go for it. There's nothing to lose now. It's just go out there and win games or compete, and that's all you can do. And at the end of the day, it's if you do that, there's a chance, and their chances they're looking right at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it stinks that they blew that 3-0 lead, and frankly, it really hurt because they were 23 seconds away from the biggest win in a long time, biggest regular season in a long time, not against CSU, of course, because those wins are already so important. I mean, it stinks, yes. And frankly, I was more frustrated when they ended up losing because I thought that because they lost in overtime, they'd actually get knocked down in the rankings because it's still a loss. Because I'm like, look, they pushed the number 3 team to overtime. You got to at least commend them for something. And because it's a computer rankings, that was kind of my nervousness because we'd seen this season they just had not been able to get boosted up like that. They had not been able to find a way to claw their way into the top 25. They'd struggled.
Even after big wins, they still kind of just hung around that 34 range.
Like they get up to like the high 20s every now and then, but they drop back down a little bit. And they'd split with Utah, or they'd split with Missouri State, and nothing would happen. So considering they lost both of those games, I expected the same thing to happen. But obviously,
got a little bit of a good surprise, a nice surprise.
Boost up 11 spots?
I think it was 11 spots at 23. It was definitely 23. I think they were at 34 before.
Yeah, but it was double-digit spots.
It was double digits
for 2 losses in overtime. I mean, considering that and UCO just played CSU this weekend, they beat them both in times in regulation. The fact that the only blemish to a perfect conference record right now for UCO are those 2 overtime wins against CU is pretty crazy because they looked very much mortal in those 2 games. They had to come back. And usually when you get to that situation, it's really interesting to watch the better team play because they're so used to playing ahead and getting out to just ginormous leads that are just insurmountable for any team. And to see them face adversity, it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, you see this in like college football a lot where, the Alabamas and the Ohio States, like they don't face adversity very much because they're just that dominant. They don't have to worry about that. So it's interesting to see those types of great teams face adversity. And I think that says a lot about UCO that, they deserve that spot because not only can they, go out and dominate from start to finish, but they can also find a way down out of a hole. So I think that it just shows how good that team is. But I think it shows how much improved this CU team is because you look at those games back in Boulder, thoroughly outplayed, couldn't, and this was with Liam O'Gwyn making sprawling save after sprawling save for the first half of that game, that second game that he started, but they still lost 8-2.
Yeah.
So I think those were huge. I know you're not a big fan of moral victories, but I think those 2 games were big moral victories.
It's hard to be like, oh yeah, we lost, but that was a good game. I think it's different in this situation.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, we played with the top 3 team in the country.
You're making headlines for even hanging with UCO.
Now let's go finish this semester strong. You're not going to play another team as good as them until your last series against UNLV, but bids for nationals are already out. So it's like you got a 4-week stretch where you can win every game. Well, at that point it was a 5-week stretch. They can win every game now. I think that's a confidence boost. I think they had that confidence, but I think that's even more of a boost. It's like, oh wow, we are one of the teams that can compete here.
The toughest games are out of the way now. Like the Missouri State series was the toughest team that they had to play left. And I think that boost that they got from UCO, if they don't play nearly as good, they don't force that first game to overtime, they don't even get to the 3-0 lead and they lose in regulation there. I don't think they're even close to 23. They maybe get a boost into the high 20s, but the fact that they're sitting at 23 right now, even after splitting with Missouri State, that's huge going into this weekend and the last 4 weeks of the regular season. Before Nationals bids, of course, they have 2 more series after that, but the ones that count, these are all really big. I think probably the biggest one to get in a great position for the last month is this weekend.
I agree. I think it's this weekend. Oklahoma started off undefeated. Colorado handed them their first loss.
Mm-hmm.
They're right next to each other in the stands. We talked about that earlier. 23 and 24. The first 2 teams on the outside looking in.
You want to know the funniest part? They have identical conference records.
Identical records.
4 wins, 1 overtime win, 7 losses, and 2 overtime losses. Identical records.
It does not get more even than this. Like
No.
the teams are fair, because I looked at the points per games too for Oklahoma. They have 1 player above a point per game, I believe, and it's 1 point above. Like they have 22 games played. The leading scorer has 23 points. Colorado's kind of in that same boat. It's just a point per game players at the top, but it's balanced scoring. It's not these
3.
high end. They have 3.
They have 3. Pearson and Pashenik have 17 points in 17 games played, and then Wood is the only one above that mark with 1.15, 15 points in 13 games played.
So both these teams are very balanced. It feels like on that scoring end where you're not having a superstar necessarily dominate and get all the points, or that one line that's just destroying everyone. It's very even 3-4 lines that can go out and play.
I think that's probably the biggest improvement from what they were last year, because it was that one line that really did everything.
I think the big difference between these 2 teams is the goalies. Colorado has 2 goalies, it seems, they trust with O'Gwen and Server.
And Server played great in that first game against UCO, and he played good. I think he played the first game against Missouri State. He played very well. I really like what he's doing.
Oklahoma has 1. Culbertson Bond played 29 games. That's too many. No, 20 games if they're 22. And he's the workhorse. So that's the big difference. Maybe that's the difference between the 2 games, where maybe the Buffs can get in Culbertson Bond's head, and the Buffs have 2 goalies they can rely on. So even if maybe the first game doesn't go great, because you've seen that they have been out to slow starts in the Friday night games and then come out in the Saturday games. It seems like their mindset's changed. I think they know that they have to fix that kind of moving forward. They have to just get on the pedal fast.
Well, and when we talked to Blake, that was exactly what happened in that second game against Missouri State, and I think that's a great learning experience to know what to do for the future and be like, hey, we won that first game. Great win.
You got to win the second one, too.
Don't let up.
Yep.
Keep the foot on the gas pedal.
So I think I'm excited for this week, and I think it's going to be an even matchup. I know last year the games against Oklahoma were awesome.
Yeah, you got to be there firsthand for that.
It was a 5-4 overtime win and then a 1-0 loss in regulation.
So I mean,
both
close
were
games.
exciting games though. So I think these are very even teams when it cut. I mean, it seems nearly identical.
Their series last year is the duality of hockey: 5-4 overtime thriller and a 1-0 defensive struggle goalie
thriller.
competition.
Still a thriller, though.
Exactly.
So I'm excited for this weekend, and I mean, I'm kind of antsy watching. Like on Wednesdays, waiting for the rankings to come out. I'm like, what happened? Like, now it's like it gets tiring. Looking, I'm not even like on the team. It's tiring looking at that 34 spot. It's like,
We didn't go up at all.
Bump up, and now it's 23. It's like, okay, there's 4 weeks left.
Yep.
St. Louis is right there in the grass. You just gotta keep crawling towards it.
Yep.
So that it starts this weekend, and I'm certainly excited.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot to look forward to with this D1 team. I think that the future's bright because, as you mentioned, they're getting production from the old guys, but there are a bunch of young guns out there making a huge impact that should strengthen the foundation for this team for years to come.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, there's definitely freshmen who if they stick around for the 4 years, Colorado's like a desirable spot to be.
Yeah.
And then adding coach, I don't I wanted to do a study on this. If Coach Prime helps club sports, I have no clue.
You've talked about that quite a bit. I think that'd be interesting to try and investigate, but it's.
I have no clue how
Yeah.
to investigate that, and also I have no clue if it's anywhere near true or if it's just like a coincidence.
Mhm.
But like, there's so much attention on Boulder right now with the sports, even the basketball teams killing it.
Yeah.
It's like, does that bring more people to play club sports as well?
Well, I mean,
No clue. But
what we
it's
thought
interesting.
was plenty of players from the D2 team were going to be playing with the D1 team this year. And obviously that did not happen. No one from the D2 team that played last year is on the D1 team this year. The only player who swapped teams is Jadon Del Tufo, and he's on the D2 team right now, and he hasn't played that much this year. And I think this is actually a perfect way to transition into that team. They've played 5 games in this semester already. Unfortunately, they've all been at home. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to cover the majority of them because the BMHC Classic was the weekend before classes resumed, so we weren't able to bring coverage for those games for you guys, but seemed like we didn't really miss too much.
Yeah. I mean, some of them seemed like exciting games, just
Yeah.
like looking at the scores and stuff. And but 1-3 in the week in a 4-game stretch is just
hard.
it's a little tough to start the semester that way.
Yeah, no, I would have loved to see that shootout win over GCU. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, they got that 1 win, so that was big.
That was nice, but
those Texas teams are good, I guess.
hey, first time they scored against a team from Texas at home this season. It took them 4 games, but they got 2 in. Still let up 4, but you know, and their season was kind of in the balance this weekend. Or excuse me, they played 5 home games. They played 6 total
games. Yeah, that's what.
They had a back-to-back this weekend in Fort Collins, and then here at the Rec Center against Metro State. That CSU game is really hard because they
were
go
up 4-1, right?
I think 3-1.
3-1?
3-1, and they let up 6.
6. That's
6
right.
in the
That is
third.
7-3.
They score
Or
one to
they
cut the
scored one.
deficit to 3, but it's just a tough
7-4.
loss.
Yeah, that's tough.
So
That's
that one
hard.
hurt.
Especially because they ended last semester beating CSU.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard to come back and have that lead and then just 6 goals in the third period.
Yeah.
It's not. That's not great. That's a lot. That's kind of a heartbreaker. It's like, especially against a rival like that.
Yeah. So they also, get thoroughly beat by Metro State. They're now 11-0 in the BMHC play. They clinched the 1 seed in the BMHC before that game. They have 1 conference game left against Denver, who clinched the number 2 seed over at the semester break as well, and they just beat Colorado State 11-0. Now, granted, I have no idea how that went, but conference games are running out.
No idea how that went, but I think 11-0's a pretty sound domination.
Yeah.
But
That just doesn't sound like a fun game.
No.
After it gets to
Well,
6. Depends.
Depends on what side you're on.
It's true. If you're on the winning side, you're just like, okay, put me in there. I want to score a goal. I want to score. But CU, they've got 5 games left in the regular season. They've got 3 road games this weekend. They're all against teams from Utah, and it's not easy. Weber State and Utah State, some of the best teams in the West region. Utah Valley is much more mortal than the other 2. And that's probably the game, if they're going to win any of them, it's probably going to be that one. If they find a way to win against either Weber State or Utah State, that is huge.
Yeah.
But I think it might be a little too late to try and get to regionals. But it could. But remember, there is the BMHC tournament, so they could use that as momentum in there.
They could. It's kind of slim now, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because we said if they start off this semester strong, do well in the BMHT Classic, maybe get a win against CSU. Metro is probably the best team though they're gonna play.
Mm-hmm.
So if they start out maybe even like 4-2 or 3-3 even, but just starting 1-5, I think it just kind of dwindles the chance of regionals to very slim. But they're playing very good teams this weekend. We saw what losing in overtime to a good team did for the D1 team.
Yeah.
if they pull off a win, close loss, who knows? Like, it's hard to tell, but it's definitely time is now running out.
Yeah,
kind of.
they're
It's like you can't just keep pushing it. Like, oh well, there's still a little bit of time to try to turn things around. It's time's running out, and if you figure it out for the tournament, that's great. But it's going to be tough to go through Denver and Metro State.
Yeah, and they're going to make it to regionals anyways. So I mean, the only way you're going to get in is getting that auto bid for the conference.
Yeah.
And that will steal a bid away from someone else because you're not in the top 14 right now. If you win the conference tournament, you take the bid away from someone maybe like Northern Arizona or Arizona State or GCU or Boise State, someone that's sitting around that maybe a Texas team like East Texas Baptist or something. I don't know. But that's pretty much their only shot now. They have 2 conference games left. They got Wyoming and Colorado State at home next weekend. Those are the only games next weekend. So that should be interesting. They definitely had Wyoming's number earlier this season.
Yep.
Wyoming still hasn't won a conference game.
Oh.
So that's a must-win. That should be a win. And then CSU again. And, of course, we saw what happened the last time they played CSU in Boulder. So they could possibly get 2 conference wins to end the season. Again, we have no idea how this tournament's going to work with no UNC this year, with no Northern Colorado.
That's
So,
true.
We have no idea if it's going to be some.
I assume it's just a 5-team.
They'd have to do like if it's either going to be the 5-team or
The first seed gets a bye.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out. Either all 5 or
No matter what it is,
Yeah.
it's not going to be easy.
it's not going to be easy. They're going to have to probably beat both Denver and Metro State.
Yes,
That's probably going to be the pathway, and probably both on the road too.
and yes, in looking at those odds, which I don't know what the math would add up to. It's small.
Yeah.
Small chance of that likelihood happening. So,
But a perfect chance for an underdog story here at CU.
that is true. Everyone loves a good underdog story.
So we'll have to see if that happens. One thing that will be interesting for me, because I'm pretty sure after regionals and everything happens, Metro State has a series scheduled with Iowa State, the D1 Iowa State team. And in the notes, it says that the series will only be played if Metro State gets an auto bid to nationals. So I think that means they're either number 1 or number 2 in the West region. I don't know if that means maybe that means if they win the conference tournament. Maybe that means they just make it to nationals, period. So I have no idea, but I think that's really interesting to see how they square up against a team who's currently in the top 25 in D1. So I think that'll be kind of an interesting gauge. And and another thing, Metro State beat the D1 CSU team in Fort Collins to start the season. So they're a really good team. I don't think the D2 team should really beat themselves up too much. They looked pretty good offensively. Like, one thing we've talked about so much is how they've struggled to score and how they've struggled to have just any sort of offensive pressure. They had a couple of really good chances. They were getting more shots on goal. They just looked better offensively against Metro State this past weekend. I think that they used that and are able to generate more grade A scoring chances. They were able to generate scoring chances, but being able to pick your corner and have better shot selection, maybe you put another 2 past the goaltender. So I think that is a great sign that they were able to get more shots and get more. It was a much more exciting game than on paper. There were a couple of those other blowouts that we've seen this year that have just been really dry and a slog to get through. It was a bit more exciting. They had their fair share of opportunities, but of course their goaltender was fantastic and probably robbed another 2 or 3 goals for Colorado. So maybe that's what they need.
There's always a chance, but something's got to turn here quick.
Well, so that's what the D2 team's looking at right now, going into the final couple weeks this season. The women's team is interesting. They started their semester this weekend. They're the only team who did not play before this past weekend. And they lost to the University of Minnesota twice, 4-2 and 3-2. Now, one thing we noticed with their road games, especially early in the year, they had gotten beaten to a pulp. They had gotten beaten bad bad. They did not get beat that bad. 3 goals, especially compared to being beat 11-1 and 6-1 game in, game out. It's different. So, I mean, interesting, but still not good enough.
Not quite, but I think they still have the chance, though, because of how the WWCHL works. So maybe those are good games to be like, okay, we can play against a good team. I'm pretty sure Minnesota has a pretty good record. And
Let me check real quick at the most recent rankings.
I'm pretty sure they're above 500. I don't know if they slipped into the top 15 or what.
They're in the top half. They're in the top half.
So
they're not like McKendree was like top 5 and those schools that are way up there, but they're still definitely good. They just play in a tough conference.
So I think, I mean, how many conference games do they have left? Because that's what matters.
I think outside of those games against Wyoming, those were their last out of conference games.
All right.
And not only that, those were their last out of conference road games. They're on the road the next 2 weekends.
All right. And I mean, Denver got destroyed by Arizona State this weekend.
They
twice.
also got beat by Grand Canyon twice.
So that kind of opens the door for Colorado to get that last spot.
Not only that, but to be comfortably in with GCU beating Denver twice and Denver losing twice, that saves the season for GCU. Denver now sits at 2-6. They haven't played since that 3-2 win against CU all the way back in early November. This past weekend was their first games.
Huh.
And they got crushed by Arizona State twice, and they got beat by GCU twice. And now they sit in a position where they have 2 conference games left against Utah, and that's it. The best they can do is 4-6. GCU, those 2 wins are huge. They only have 2 conference games left, and those will go against both against ASU.
So Colorado, they need to win 2 games, 2 conference games.
They're sitting at 3-4 right now.
Well,
in
it's
the
win
conference.
percentage.
Yeah.
You have to keep that in mind.
Yes.
But it's right there. It's open.
Yeah, if they play 500 hockey for the rest of the season, they're in the tournament.
Well, we said last semester it's like they probably have the best chance to get to postseason. Now I would say the second best chance, but still probably the most likelihood, honestly.
Yeah.
If you put the percentage or whatever math people do their thing.
Yeah.
Not me.
That's not my strong suit.
No, not
either.
me. But they just got to win 1 or 2 games in the conference. It seems
They've got 6 games left.
they got if
Denver
they win
and
if they win
GCU
3,
have-
they're in, right?
Yeah. If they win 3, they'd be in. They'd have 6 wins. If they lost the other 3, they'd be 6-7. The best GCU can do is
loses-
5-7. The best Denver can do is 4-6.
Let's see win percentage.
That would be better anyway.
That'd be 400 win percentage for Denver.
Yeah, and CU, if they went and won 3 of their last 6, they sit at 6-7. Or wait, excuse me, they're 3-3 within the conference right now. I don't know why I have it at 3-4. So they're actually dead even right now.
They're at 500.
They're at 500.
They don't have to play Arizona State.
Nope.
Ooh.
They play CSU 4 times. They play in Fort Collins this weekend. Next weekend it's Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And then it's Wyoming, and then CSU again at home. You win 3 games, you're in.
It's that simple, but that hard at the same time.
CSU can, but at the same time, CSU can jump you. Now, then again, they won't knock you out of the tournament.
You got to get in. All you got to do is get in.
Yeah.
And then it can go, that's the crazy thing. If you're in, anything can happen. Again, Arizona State.
Well, I think
they're pretty good.
Utah sits at 3-3 right now in the conference as well. They have 4 games left. They also have 6 games left. They have Arizona State this weekend at home. Then they have us. Then it's the CU-Utah matchup. And then they have those Denver games. So they also have 6. If they struggle, I mean, you'd assume ASU is now 11-0 in conference. They can't lose. They can't lose.
They played those. They played some pretty tough games over break, and
they beat
some pretty good teams.
They beat McKendree on the road by 3 goals.
If I remember correctly from last year's WWCHO tournament or playoff tournament, it was the 1 and 2 seed played the 3 and 4 seed, like each seed, and then it got reseeded from there, where the 1 seed then played the 4 seed and 2 seed played. I think that's what happened.
So,
but
the
2 seed is your way
2 and 1 will not play each other in round robin play.
Exactly.
So 2 and 1 won't play, 3 and 4 won't play. 1 will play 3 and 4, 2 will play 3 and 4. So there's four games. And it's like you win both, you're in the championship game.
Yep. And then
so I mean we were doing a lot of gymnastics when it came to how one team would get in or not last year, because GCU beat Utah, and of course CSU beat Utah as well. So there was a chance Colorado State would have played ASU in the title game.
Those tiebreakers were insane.
That was
it was actually kind of fun trying to figure out the tiebreakers.
Yeah, we were talking with the ASU crew and just kind of going through on what needed to happen in like this next period.
So the ideal situation is you get the 2 seed, so then you don't have to play Arizona State until the championship. If
then they
don't get knocked out, because if they get knocked out
before then, it's
anything can happen. But you don't want to be the team playing them really until the championship.
Yeah, you want to make sure that
you want to get there.
Yeah,
but so like it's weird because like it doesn't feel like the season's been going overly great for them.
They're 4-10. But the 3 of the 4 wins are important, and they're conference wins.
So that's why it's like, okay, there is this hope, and even though it's not going great, necessarily going great, being 4-10, there's that chance to then just make the postseason, and then anything can happen.
And that's why I think Denver losing their games are huge, because they're 6-7 right now. They had a good start, but they beat Montana State twice. They beat Air Force. They beat CU. They beat Air Force twice, actually, and they beat CSU. There you go. They have 4 wins against those teams, and then you have the 2 wins against us and CSU. And you look at CU, they beat Montana State, but now they beat Denver by 4, and they beat GCU twice, where Denver lost to GCU twice. So I think it's interesting going forward to see what Colorado can do on the road. They haven't won a road game this year. That's the thing that kind of scares me a little bit. Haven't won a road game this year, but they
have home games though.
Yeah, they have 2 conference home games left. If they win both of those, that's 5 wins. They finish 5-7. They're still probably in.
And they had a pretty decent game against Denver on the road. They just kind of fell apart.
And they only lost by 1 against Minnesota.
I think they're pretty closely comparable to CSU as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty even matchup overall, but they gotta find a way to pull out a win or 2 in these next 4 games. I think.
Yeah,
if they win 1, if they win 2 games in this next 4, I think they're pretty comfortably getting in.
Yeah, I think getting in is a given.
But they just gotta go out there and put the puck in the net. And
if they beat Utah twice, I think that probably spells that they can get into the 2 seed.
That'd be crazy.
Because Utah's got ASU.
How things turn so quick.
I've got ASU twice, so you assume that things go as expected, and ASU wins. That puts them, and if CU beats them twice, that puts Utah at 3-7, and then they're in danger of missing the tournament a little bit. Then those games against Denver the next weekend become incredibly important. So I'm
excited to watch the home stretch of this.
This home stretch. I mean, again, like we said this at the beginning of the year, it's ASU and then everybody else.
We made that pretty clear. Yeah,
and it's so funny because
I think we were right about that.
Because you look at the rankings, and everyone in this conference is in the bottom 10 in the country out of the 31 teams, and then there's ASU in the top 10. So it's incredibly competitive between the 5 teams that are not Arizona State. The quest now becomes, can someone beat the Sun Devils? Because not only have they not lost in conference, they have 4 games left, and they could have a 15-0 regular season, and then just cruise through the tournament. But again, anything can happen in the tournament.
Yep.
So, I think you're right. I think the conference to watch out of the 3 conferences is the WWCHL. I think the WCHL is probably the most exciting conference, but not everyone plays everyone, and we're more focused on getting into nationals, and they don't have a conference tournament. So I think the WWCHL, I think as a conference, is going to be the most exciting to watch.
Definitely.
So looking ahead, Colorado has Colorado State. The women's team is Colorado State this weekend. They play them twice. The D2 team is out in Utah. They start playing tomorrow on Thursday, the 25th, against Weber State. We'll get a good gauge on what their status is after that one. And the D1 team, the
Big
lone
games.
home games of the weekend.
Big games.
Probably the biggest games of the weekend.
The last time they were here, oh man, that CSU game, it was filled here. It's just the games are so much more fun when it's filled. The CU Rec Center's filled. So
I agree. So come show up. The team's good. The team's good. They're fun to watch. They're exciting to watch. It's a good team. And if you are interested, both games start at 7 p.m. right here. And you know, if you're out of state, you can't make it to the rec center. You can always find the live streams right here on our YouTube channel here at Scope of Sports. We are going to provide coverage for those. But the more people that show up, the more energy and the more motivated the team's going to feel. At least that's what I'd assume, right?
it feels like that.
That's what it feels
the
like.
energy in the building just is so exciting. Like even when we're calling the game, it just is more exciting.
Yeah.
Just when there's people around.
It's a better environment.
Man, I love a good game. I love a good hockey game.
Yeah, because you like hockey.
I do like hockey. That helps.
And if you're new to hockey, what a great opportunity to watch your first game. You don't have to dump any money. You don't really have to. You're not going to be costing yourself a fortune. You just walk out of the rec center and there you go. You get to watch and learn, and it's a great sport. Come watch. There's my spiel. And long story short, come watch, come show up, come support the Buffs. They need your help. You've seen how impactful it is when they show up to the women's basketball games and the men's basketball games, and how awesome it is. They're breaking attendance records. I think this team deserves some love. They're playing good. There's really not much else besides basketball going on anyways. And I think both of the basketball teams are on the road this weekend too.
They are.
So there's really not much. And if this is a perfect way to get some sports fix. And they're playing the University of Oklahoma. It's not some smaller school that some people may not have heard of. Everyone knows what the University of Oklahoma is, and everyone knows who that is. Everyone knows what that means. I think that this is a perfect weekend for this series to happen. I cannot tell you how excited I am for these two games. That excitement is immeasurable. So yeah, those are the big games this weekend. Of course, the other two teams, it's kind of hard to watch those teams when they're on the road. The women's team did do live streams this past weekend for the Minnesota game, so it might be interesting to check in, see how they're doing against CSU during intermissions. But I think the highlight of the weekend is the D1 team for sure. They're fighting for a nationals bid right now, and they need your support. Friday, January 26th, Saturday, January 27th, 7 p.m. at the Rec Center right here in Boulder. Show up. Come support your Buffs. Any final comments, Jared?
I'm excited too, Alex.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Dangle, Snipe, and Stampede. We're back, and we're ready for more CU hockey. Second and third broadcast of the semester coming your way Friday and Saturday. Don't miss it. It's right here on this YouTube channel. And that'll do it for this episode of Dangle, Snipe, and Stampede. Thank you so much for tuning in. And you heard it here first on Scope of Sports.